Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to solve another Google Code Jam question. This is one of the most latest ones, as I have taken it from the qualification round of Code Jam 2022, which happened just last week, and I was also fortunate enough to qualify with 71 points. So without further ado, let's just dive into this video. So here we are at my laptop's screen, and this is the question that we are going to address. The tagline of this question is punched card. Now what you can do is pause this video and try to go through the entire problem and understand what the question is actually trying to convey. But what I will do, I'll just go down here and I will read only two sections of this question. The first one is input and the second one is output, and hopefully we will get everything that we need to start writing code to solve this problem. Now for input, we have the first line. The first line of the input gives us the number of test cases t. So just like any other question in Google Code Jam, the very first line gives us the total number of test cases that we have to discuss in order to solve this problem. And after that we have different lines, and each line is describing a different test case, and each test case has two integers, r and c, and r is number of rows and c is number of columns of punch card that must be drawn. Now what output should we return? For each test case, output one line containing case hash x colon. So one line of the output should be like this: case hash x column, and x here is a test case number that is starting obviously from 1. Now the drawing that we have to print in the output should have a number of rows which we can calculate by this formula. So if we have r is equal to 3, number of rows in the input is 3, the number of rows in the output should follow this formula, and 3 into 2 will be 6, and 6 plus 1 will be 7. So the number of rows of the output should be 7, and same will be true for a number of columns as well. So what you can do is you can just go here and try to compare the corresponding input and outputs to understand this question a bit better. In the very first line we have 3. That means we will have 3 test cases in this problem, and you can see this is a test case 1, test case 2, and test case 3. And now let's just analyze the output corresponding to the test case 1. Here we have two integers. The first one is 3 and the second one is 4. Now 3 is number of rows and 4 is number of columns. Now for number of rows 3 in the output, we have to have 7 number of rows in the output, right? Because we have to follow this formula, which is 2 into r plus 1. So for this 3, we will have 2 into 3 plus 1, which is equal to 7. And I previously told you that the same case will be true for number of columns. Here you can see we have this 4, so 2 into 4 will be 8 plus 1, 9. So 9 columns will be printed out in the output. Here you can see we have this 1 column, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we have 7 rows, and they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Right? So that is how we will calculate the dimensions of the output that we have to print out. But our output should look like this, where the first cell of this output, which is this, will only have dot, 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 and dot, instead of printing out plus, minus, straight bar, or dot, right? So let's just go ahead and try to understand that what we actually have in this output that we can use to implement the code. Now I just told you that we have total total columns equals to 9, and you can see if we start from 0, then total number of columns will be from 0 to 8, 9. So this right here is the first column, and adjacent to that this is the second column, and same goes all the way to the end, and you can count that we have 9 columns. And just like that, I'll just change the color here. Maybe now I'll just change the color, and we have this first row, and then adjacent to that we have this second row, and then we have this third row, and all the way to the end, the total number of rows are 7, just according to the formula we were given in the question, which was 2 into r plus 1. Right, now what I can do is I can just remove all these rectangles so that we can see the figure quite clearly. And here you can see at this place we have all the elements dot dot. Right, we don't have plus, we don't have minus, we don't have bar, we only have dot. So in order to achieve this, we have to find the location of these dots. For example, if we talk about the column of this dot, then the column of this dot will be 0, right, because it is in the first column. And if we talk about the row of this dot, then you can see the row of this dot is also 0, because this is in the first row. So the location of this this dot right here will be 0 0, because the column is also 0 and the row is also 0. But what happens to the next dot, this one? I'll just change the color here. What we can analyze from this figure is, if you can see, this dot is actually in this second column, right? And if we talk about row, then this dot is also in the first row. So the location of this dot will be right, 0 column and 0 row and first column, right? And same goes for these two dots. The column of this dot is 0 and the row of this dot is 1. So the location of this dot will be 1, 0, right? And same goes for the next dot, which we can say is okay, let me just select this. I'm talking about this dot right here. Here you can see its number of column is also 1 and number of row is also 1. Here you can see, so its location will be 1, 1, right? So that is how we can implement these dots on these specific locations and all the other elements in all other locations, right? So for that we can write the condition. Okay, so what we can do is we can just simply go ahead and try to write some code. First of all, we have to read this input, and for that we can use a variable called t. T is for test cases, and obviously we have to have this input here because we want to take input, and we know in Python input functions takes anything in the string data type, and to convert that into integer we have to use this integer function. Now after this we have 3 stored in this t for test case 1. For this specific input, right? Now that means we have to write a loop which will go into these test cases one after the other, right? So for that we can write for I in range t. Now range gives us indexes starting from 0 all the way to the variable that we have mentioned in the parentheses of range function. So if I just go ahead and write this, I think it will make a lot of sense now, because we have 3 numbers stored in the loop in this I variable, but because of range starting from 1 we are starting from 0, because indexes in programming languages always start from 0. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and remove this, and we can go inside this loop and write some code to read this string one by one in each iteration. So for that I can just choose a variable s and I can write input. Okay, so here we are taking this line in as an input using input function. So basically this is also a string, but what we can do is we can create a list of numbers by splitting this string. Now we have splitted this string on the basis of a space, and after splitting we will have two characters 3 and 4, but still the data type of these characters is string. So one of them, remember, is number of rows and the other is number of columns. So for rows I can use r, and r comes first in the list, so we can write list 1 0. Now this is the index of first element. That means we are calling the number of rows from the list that we created after reading this string, right? And remember, this character or this element was in string data type, so we can convert it into integer using in function. And what we have to do is, I hope you remembered this formula, which they told us that the number of rows in the output should follow this formula, which is 2 into r plus 1. So for that, what we can do is we can write complete parentheses around this, and we can multiply this with 2. Now this is being r multiplied by 2, and after that what we can do is we can create another bracket, and we can write 1. And I think we don't really need this bracket here, so we can just remove it. And what you can do is you can just copy it, and remember I told you that the same will be true for a number of columns as well, but the only difference is this time we will call an element that is present on the second position, on 1th position, right? Which is 4 in this case, and this 4 is the number of columns that we are given, we are given in the output, and according to this 4 we should have 9 columns in the output. Okay. Now after that, what we have to do is we have to print output for each test case right here. So I can just go ahead and write print, and I can say man just print case hash, and after that just print string of I plus 1. Okay, remember I just told you that when we write loop for range, the indexes start from 0, but in the question it told us that you have to print the test case number starting from 1. If we have 0 in the first iteration, then here we will have 0, and in that 0 we will actually add 1. So 0 plus 1 will be 1, and 1 plus 1 will be 2 in the next iteration, and 2 plus 1 will be 3 in the next iteration. Now we are actually adding that number into this string, and I mean normally it would have been okay, and we wouldn't face any kind of problem. But if you don't convert into string, then this program will not be will not get submitted, and you will always get some sort of error, because the output that they have printed out here is all of this is in string format. So to convert this number into string, you can just go ahead and use the function string, just like you use the function integer to convert string into integers. Now after that, what you have to do is you have to print out this colon, and after that here you can see all the other output is in the next line, so you have to create a new line, right? So you can write this, and after that you can call your function in which you are solving this problem, and in that function you will give your attributes that are rows and columns. Obviously you will give the number of rows and number of columns from the input to this solve function to do the processes and return this result here. So that is why you have called this function, because as the result of this function we should get this output right here, right? So sweet. Now we can just move ahead and try to create the function that we just called, and we have to give it a give it some attributes. Now here we have to write the entire code that will do the processes to do all this. Okay, until now whatever we wrote here is just reading the input and giving us the output, but the process that we have to do is will go in this function. So this is the very important part of the video. I hope you're enjoying this video up till now, and you will learn something significant from it. Okay, first of all, what we can do is we can create an empty string, and we can add all of this into that empty string, and as the result we can return that string, right? So I'll just go ahead and I will write str1. This is an empty string that I just declared. Now what you have to do is you have to go into each row, and in each row you have to go inside each column to print out the desired output that you want. So for that, first of all you have to go inside the rows, and after that you have to go inside of the columns. You know why? Because if you see this, if you here, this is the entire row, right? This is one entire row, or we can just write it, this is entire row. Okay, now in this one row we have multiple columns, like this is the first column, and this is the second column, and this is the third column, and so on and so forth until this column right here. So the point is, in one row you have multiple columns, so there will be a nested loop. The first one will take us into this row, and the second one will take us into these columns one by one. Okay, so for that, first of all, just go ahead and write a loop for rows. I can write for row in range R, because R represents the number of rows that we have to have in our output, right? And inside that row loop, I can write column loop, and for that I will use range C. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to implement this part of the code that we discussed earlier, that we have to print dot dot for this cell, and we discuss the position of all these dots, and I hope you remember that the position was either 0 in terms of rows, or either 1 in terms of rows, or it was either 0 in terms of columns, or it was 1 in terms of columns, right? So we can simply write a condition. We can say if your row is less than or equals to 1, and your columns are less than or equal to 1, then what you can do is you can simply call your string, which is output string, and add dot in these positions. Okay, so this will return us all the dots in the first cell, which had 0 1 0 1 1 1 locations in terms of rows and columns. Now after that, we have to print out this remaining part of the output, and for that we have to go first into each row, and then we have to go into each column. So we can write the condition. We can say else if, because this is the first condition, if this condition will satisfy, just go ahead and print the dot. But if this doesn't happen, then what you have to do is for that you have to write another condition, and for that in Python we use elif, which is actually else if. Check your columns. If it is even, for that you write this. I mean, this is call remainder 2 is equal to 0. That means if you divide your number of column with 2, then the remainder is 0. In that case, your column will be even. We can simply go here, and we can simply remove all this, so we understand. Now this is your even columns. These are your even columns: 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. And these are your even rows: 0, 2, 4, and 6. And we can also just simply go ahead and mark our odd as well. These are your odd columns, and these are your odd rows. Right, now you have to understand that which element is actually coming. So this is our this one here is our even row, right? Now you can see, and this is our even column. Now you have to understand that if our column is even, now what comes when our rows are even in this even column? We will just ignore these first two lines for a minute. We'll come back to it after that. We will start from here. Okay. What you can do is you can simply analyze that in even number of columns, what comes in even number of rows. For example, this row is even as well. And now you can see where column is even and the row is also even, you have plus. Same goes for this. Right? I mean, your row is even and your column is even, and here we have plus, and same goes for here. I mean, your column is even and your row is even, and you have plus here. But what if you have odd? For that, I mean, this is your even column, but when we talk about the row, this is your odd one, right? I can simply change the color of this rectangle. Now, if your column is even and your row is odd, then straight bar will be printed out. And same goes here. You can see the column is even and the row is odd, right? And same straight bar is printed out here. Okay, we can simply go ahead and check here as well. Here you can see we have another even column. I'll just go ahead and okay. Now you can see this is another even column where my cursor is moving. So we'll just go ahead and see what happens to even rows in this even column and what happens to odd rows in this column. Now this 0 is even, so you can see this row will have plus, right? I mean, this column is even and this row is even, so here we have this plus. I'll just simply go here and I will change the color again and I will mark it. Okay, and this is 2, so 2 is again even, and this column is even, this row is even, so you get plus here, right? And this row is even and this column is even, so you get plus here, and this row is even and this column is even and you get plus here, right? For one last time, we'll check the odd rows in the even column. I'll simply change the color again. Now you can see this is even column, but this row is not even, it is odd. So here we have this straight bar printed out. Now this column is even, but this row is not even, this is odd. So here we have this straight bar. Now this column is again even and this row is again odd, and here we have this straight bar right here. So that is how this question is actually working. You have to print where column, you have to print plus where we have both column and rows even, and you have to print a straight bar where we have even column and odd rows. So for that you can write a simple code here. You can say, look man, just check whether the column is even or not. If it is even, then check if row is even or not, right? So for that we can write check row is %2 is equal to even. Now if the row is even, just what should you do? You can just call the string output string and you can add plus in it. Simple as that. But if that is not true, what that means is if the row is odd and the column is even, then you can simply go ahead and add straight bar into it, right? So this is the condition that we discussed right now. On the other hand, what you can do is you can do the opposite for even number of columns. We can discuss that as well. I can just go ahead and remove all of this so we can understand it a bit better. Here you can see I will select this rectangle here. This is an odd column, right? These are all odd column. I can just go ahead and mark them with these rectangles. Now what happens when your number of column is odd and your number of row is even? In that case, I'll just change the color again. Now, okay, I'll redraw this rectangle here. Okay, now we can simply change the color. And okay, now this row is on 0th position. That means this is an even row because we have 0 here, obviously, and 0 is an even number. You can see when this column is odd and this row is even, you can see we have minus here. I'm not discussing here because this was a dedicated path and we already have printed out dots here. So we can simply move here to understand the example. Now here we have odd column and even row, right? So that means when the column is odd and row is even, we will have this minus here. Again, I can just simply go here and this is another even row and this is this is again odd column, right? So I can just simply go and change the color. So here you can again see we have minus here. Now again, what I can do is I can write this another rectangle for even row. Now row is even, but your column is odd. In that case, we again have this minus here. So we can see that if your row is even and your column is odd, then you have to print out minus. So we can simply go here and write the condition for that. We can say, man, just check if the row is even or not. I mean, we are not writing condition here. I mean, at first we had a column even. Now if the columns are not even, then they can only be odd, so we don't have to write any condition for that. But inside of this else, we have to check for rows individually, right? So if row is even, what we just discussed, if the row is even, then simply call your output string and add minus in it, right? And if not, then what you should do, I'll simply go and remove all this. Now we have to discuss for odd rows. So these are odd rows. I can simply go ahead and draw these rectangles here. Okay, now I'll just change the color here. Okay, so now this column is odd and this row is also odd. So when column and rows both are odd, then we have dot here, right? Now this column is again odd and this row is again odd, then we again have this dot here. Now this row is again odd and this column is again odd, then we again have dot here, right? So if the column is odd and the row is odd, then we simply can go ahead and write else, and we can print out dot, right? Simple as that. And after that, at the end, what we have to do is we have to return the output string. But before that, we have to create a new line. As you can see, after each iteration, we go to the new line, right? So before calling out my entire string in the output, I can simply go to this loop here, and I can say that simply add some sort of new line, and new line can be created by this, right? And after that, I can simply say return my string. Okay, so I think that should be enough for this problem, and we can simply go ahead and click on test run mode, and we can copy our input and we can paste here and we can run test, and this is completed. I'll click here, and here you can see you can go there and you can compare your output, right? Or your maybe I'll just go here and I do this. Okay, now you can compare your output, this output, with this output, and you can see the output is completely identical. And same goes for other two cases. This is the output for test case 2, and this is the output of test case 2, and here is the test case 3, and here is the test case 3. So the result of all these test cases are completely identical. That means you have solved this question completely right, and I think that is it for this video. If you like this video, if you learned something significant, just don't forget to share your feedback with me through the comment section. Also, don't forget to click on the subscribe and like button, and also do click on that bell button so you get notification whenever I upload videos like this. So goodbye for now.